Yeah. Chris, first off, really love this docuseries. And I'm just wondering, to this day, when you drive up and down Laurel Canyon Boulevard, what are some of the things that maybe pop up in your mind, I guess, in a general sense about that time?
Well, Greg, I rarely drive up Laurel Canyon, and I don't live in LA anymore. But having done that a couple times in the past year, you'll drive by a street, and you'll remember living on that street. I can't remember what street I lived on. Wasn't Kirkwood? I don't know, but I lived on the street that was right opposite the market, the Laurel Canyon market, all the way at the top. I lived up there, but I. It's pretty much states it quite well with the different participants in the documentary that here was this magical place. It was minutes from Sunset Strip. It was the minutes from all this activity and excitement, and then within 5 minutes you're up the hill and you're in this beautiful area, and which was a place to live back in the late 40s and early 50s too. Most of the artists, the bohemians, a lot of the actors lived up there and stuff. So it was just an ongoing process. I have no idea who lives up in there now in Laurel Canyon. I'm sure the same kind of people are artists, musicians, actors, etc.
One part of a trademark about your career, Chris, is the fact that you travel and journey throughout so many different genres of music. You're so well rounded. Is that not only does that speak to your talent, but does that also speak to your lifelong curiosity and passion for music? The fact that you're willing to not just go on one particular road, you're willing to really embrace this whole universe of music with the people you work with.
Well, I did love music. And I initially, when I started, I was very shy, very shy. You see early footage of the Byrds in 1965, I'm in the back with the bass. And then I eventually developed. I learned to sing and I learned to write and this and that. But I always felt I was a good band musician. And actually, Tom Petty said, his last interview he did, and it was so funny. He says, he said, I don't think Chris really liked show business. He didn't like that. And I saw the interview and I went, he's right. I never liked that part. I didn't care if I was in a limousine. I didn't care if any of that stuff. I liked to play music. I wasn't seeking the throne, so to speak. And later it sort of came to me where I was leading the band, doing all the songwriting and lead singing and all that later on in the 80s in the Desert Rose Band. But I just enjoyed what I was doing. Yes, I did. I always stayed, Greg, within the parameters of country music, having come out of bluegrass and traditional folk music. So country was always my well that I went back to and stayed pretty much. And I never did an R&B album or any of that stuff. And I probably would have been just terrible if I did. But I would explore other areas within the parameters of the country music.
Speaking of exploring parameters, I was looking at some of your past interviews, and you were talking about working with Tom Petty as a producer on Biding Time, and he was saying that he wasn't done with you. You have a couple of more albums that he really wants to work with you. And Chris, I know how much your family is pretty much the number one part in your life. I'm just wondering, do you have so much more solo albums and groups and explorations you want to do with that? And is part of that just having a family as your kind of foundation for that exploration?
Greg, I don't know. Tom fell right into my lap, but that was one of my last conversations with him. I just said, I really appreciate what you've done. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you wanted to do this with me. I really appreciate it. It's a great way to sort of end the recording end of my life. And he says, what are you talking about? I'm not done with you. And I went, what? And he says, we're going to do a rock album and maybe a country album. And I said, great. He was such a wonderful guy to work with. And it never happened, of course, but the fact that he said that was ever so beautiful, complimentary to me.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Greg, thank you, buddy.